So thanks for joining. We've got a great panel this afternoon. This is one of our series of WACL 50% CEO Handbook, which if people haven't read it or downloaded it, please go online and do that because it's a brilliant piece of work, I think. And we talk in there about 5 levers for change to get towards a more equitable workplace. So we've got a brilliant panel lined up here. Some last minute changes, which it's a miracle we've managed to do that on the PowerPoint. Claire Sadler, new job title, so I'm going to read it. Chief Customer and Marketing Officer at the Bashar Foundation. Thank you for joining us. Lovely to be here. Yvonne Quinn, new friend. Also a new friend who works on one of my favourite platforms. So Director of Marketing at Reddit. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
And Zav Rees, who's the Chief Exec of Abbott Mead BBDO, apparently. Also my boss.
Thanks for having me.
So absolutely zero pressure there. So the first thing I want to talk about is why one of the levers of change is be a women's health hero, which is one of the things that we're going to talk about today. And I think we've all been, there's lots of women in the crowd. I'm going to include you, Trev. You're an ally. We've all, I guess, aware that over the years, the conversation around health issues that affect women more than men have really escalated, become more positive, more inclusive. I think we're in a different world now where we can talk openly about menstrual cycles, about menopause, and about mental health issues that affect women more than men. But there's still a lot of work to do, and that's what that particular lever of change looks at. So we're going to focus on that today, mainly as employers, but also a little bit as marketeers, because why not? When we've got brilliant marketeers on the panel, we'll cover that off a little bit. So that's what we're talking about now. Yvonne, I'm so happy to have you here as a complete self-proclaimed Reddit addict. As a strategist, but also just as somebody who likes to waste a lot of time being nosy. It's a real privilege to be able to access those private and personal conversations that people are having. And I know in chatting to you separately, that health, and especially health with women, is one of those big emerging themes of conversation. So maybe you could just give us a little bit of scene setting through the platform.
Absolutely. So I think everyone has the idea that Reddit is a very male-dominated platform. It's a lot of tech, it's a lot of gamers. Over the last 3 years, we've seen such a massive rise of a female demographic coming to our platform. They're coming because there's an education gap around mental health, around wellness, around female-forward conversations that you may not feel comfortable having with your friends or in the workplace. And Reddit is a really great place that there's a community for everyone. So no matter what you're looking for, you can usually find the answer somewhere deep in Reddit. But 2, privacy is a right on Reddit. So where you want to share personal information around what you're going through, whether that is health, whether that is career, whether it is a passion or a fandom, you can do it anonymously online on Reddit, and that's where you can hopefully find connection, you can find real human answers, and you can also find validation in some of the things that other people are going through. I think there's so many answers available online, it's almost hard to find the right answer for you, and I think that's where Reddit really differentiates. There's that human element where you can find something you're looking for, you can find it so authentically, and you can usually find someone that's went through the exact same experience 3 times before you have asked that question. So you can find immediate answers, or you can also ask a question and have it answered. And the fact that it is human and it is coming from a lived experience and a shared experience means that it's a really safe place to ask and seek information from someone that's gone through.
And I think that's so interesting, given the availability of answers in inverted commas today, isn't it? Because I think what Reddit does is it fills that trust gap. And I'd love for you to talk about this, but the thing that strikes me is that there's the people that are responding to your queries don't have an agenda on Reddit. They're people who've got the same experience, they're not trying to sell you a product, there's not some sort of deep fake weirdness in there. Is it the authenticity and the real talk that people go there for?
I think so. I think every community is different because the thing about Reddit is it's self-moderated. Every community has its own rules. Every community sets those rules. But the most common rule across every single community is be nice or be civil. So people go there with the right mindset and the right intention. I also think there's 2 types of Redditors. There's someone that is overly helpful and will answer any question, and that is amazing. And then there's people that are terrified to even comment or ask a question, but they benefit from the other half of the Reddit population who are really leaned in to give those answers. So I think it doesn't matter if you're going simply to seek information or to give information. The fact that there's two completely different types of personas almost in the Redditors really helps the individual going to find what they need, or helps the individual who wants to pass on shared experience.
Yeah, it's like there's not an idea that you might be doing Reddit wrong. You can't do it wrong. It's just there.
Not do Reddit wrong. You cannot.
Sav, I wanted to just before we ask you about the specific questions about the workplace health, I want to get a bit of context for you because lots of people will be aware, I think, that this is the first year that WACL has invited men to join the conversation and to be part of bringing change. So you're one of the first cohort of male allies. I know when we were talking about that was really important to you, being part of the WACL movement. So tell us a bit about that, and then also like why Be a Women's Health Hero particularly resonates with you.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I think that when you're in a position of responsibility or privilege, like I've managed to somehow find myself, I kind of asked myself when I first became CEO whether I just wanted to do the stuff that needed doing, or actually without making any more decisions, you can just make different decisions and have some real impact. And so I actually felt it'd be a waste not to apply myself to some of those. So that, I mean, but then dialing into why why WACL, why be an ally. I've just seen so many brilliant women through my career, including some of my family, leave the industry or not be rewarded or be able to succeed in the way that I know they were more than capable of. Well, it made our businesses worse, but I also just felt this just massive sense of injustice. So that's sort of where it stemmed from. And now I'm running a business, obviously. We need all the brilliant people, of course, many of those women that we can get. And so it felt very aligned to a lot of the work I'd been doing, beyond my day job already. And well, I always looked up at WACL and felt slightly, daunted and in wonder at the whole thing, and the idea that I would even be considered, let alone actually wangle my way into being an ally of some sort with you guys, really was amazing. So I jumped at the chance, obviously. And then why women's health? As a result of my career and the experience I've already described, I've learned and realised exactly why it's one of the 5 pillars, because it has such a disproportionate impact on the career paths and trajectories of the brilliant women in our industry and outside. That it's a critical conversation that initially, for most of my career, didn't happen at all. And now happens more, but not enough. So that's why I'm here having a chat today.
And I think it's, and you're very welcome to be part of the WACL community, by the way. Also a little brand challenge for ourselves, that people feel daunted by it. That's not what we were aiming for.
I meant that in a good way. I feel daunted by lots of things.
And to all the Bloom ladies here, please don't feel daunted by WACL. That's not the point. I think we'll come back to talk a little bit more about this, but I think one of the important aspects of what you've talked about there is that I think you create an environment where we can have conversations which like bring the personal and the professional together. And I think that is I've worked for quite a lot of male bosses over the years. I can tell you it's quite unusual. Some of them have not caught up, but you have done an excellent job, I think, of creating an inclusive environment. And I know you've talked a little bit about your family, and I don't want to make this all about, you've got kids, obviously I know you've got daughters, but I think that is an important factor in the way you show up at work, not so much in the policy of it, but in the way that you present. Maybe you could speak to that for a sec.
Well, this came from a conversation Joe and I have had in the past about the fact that I can't bear it when men stand on stage and say, well, why is this meaningful? Because I've got a daughter, and you kind of go, why? Otherwise, would you have just been totally cool with that way everything was? So thanks for bring it. But it's absolutely. I mean, the way I would look at. I've got three daughters, three adult daughters, who, in turns, either are very proud of me or deny my existence and sort of pretend I'm not their dad. But I suppose the best way to put it is I've learned just so much by the conversations that I'm naturally a part of, being a part of a family of women, and they've not shied away from including me in those conversations, and I feel like my understanding and I was going to say my understanding experience, it's not is their experience. My understanding of their experiences is something I wouldn't have. Well, I'm lucky because I think we've got a family of girls who want to talk very loudly to their dad about that stuff. But yeah, I'd say it's more of an experience of learning. I don't see my interest in this subject being about protecting them in any way. I see it just, it's been really useful. Otherwise, I would probably struggle more with this conversation.
And I think it's perfectly legitimate to bring that into how you approach topics. And in the interest of parity, Claire, I am going to talk about your sons, because I know that a lot of what motivates you is role modelling and setting a good example and bringing those boys up to be the best men that they can be as well. So, but first, let's talk about you in a professional capacity. So, British Heart Foundation. Claire's our current president of WACL, also, Prez. Is that the medallion or is that actually jewellery?
This is actually jewellery. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't dare bring the medallion. I thought I might lose it.
That would be a bad outcome. But obviously, in your capacity as WACL president, as a person, but also at British Heart Foundation, women's health is like surrounding you. And I'd love for you just to talk a little bit about how those various things intersect and make this lever more important than maybe it was before.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from a professional capacity and my day job at the British Heart Foundation, there are 8 million people in the UK suffering from some sort of cardiovascular disease. Half of those are women, unsurprisingly. Although, there's a perception that heart disease or heart conditions are a man's thing. So a lot of what we do is try to obviously raise awareness around that. I think as well, in terms of, where was I going with this? What was the question, Jo? Sorry.
About why be a women's health hero is important.
And I suppose in terms of the impact that it has, a lot of what we do around the levers of change, and being a women's health hero is one of those, is about how you keep more women within the workplace for longer and help them succeed. And whether, women's health is around everything from sort of biological health, from IVF through to menopause, breast cancer, the things that affect women. Cardiovascular, disease is still the biggest killer in the world. You're more likely as a woman to die of cardiovascular disease than you are of breast cancer within the UK. So, for me, it's an important topic to raise awareness about. Obviously, I do that in my day job, but we've done it a little bit more this year within WACL, both the community of members, but also being here on this platform, talking about it more broadly outside of WACL.
I think it's so important. I know when we were designing those levers of change, it was really important to make that a lever in its own right, because ill health, poor health, health challenges can be perceived as weakness. And it's not. They're pervasive facts of life, aren't they? So I think it's brilliant that we're having this conversation and that it's one of those fundamental elements of it. I'm just going to touch on you as a mum in this capacity as well. So do you have good conversations with the boys about your health and about women's health issues, or are they're not too little for that, I don't think, are they?
No, they're not. No, I mean, my eldest son is a grown-up now. He's 19. My youngest son is 15. A bit like Sav, sometimes they disown me, sometimes they will talk to me. And yes, it was always very important for me as a working parent to show up and show, women have a role within leadership and running businesses, but also talk openly about the things that impact women's lives that might be different to things that they might experience. So, I'm quite open about being perimenopausal, having a perimenopausal mum and a 15-year-old hormonal teenage boy in the house can sometimes be quite interesting. Yeah, in terms of a clashing of rage and hormones and moodiness. But I've always been tried to be very open about that. And particularly because they're two boys, they don't have sisters. And they go to an all-boys school, which wasn't my choice, but it was, I didn't have a choice in terms of where they went in that respect. So I've always tried to, I suppose, over-index in bringing that female perspective into the home, because they wouldn't necessarily get it from each other, and they wouldn't necessarily get it from the school environment as well. So, leaning into those female-centric conversations.
It's really good. I mean, it sounds hard work.
It's definitely paid off with my eldest son, who's very much an ally. I'm very proud of that. The youngest one, I think, he's 15 and would rather sit in his room and not talk to anybody at the moment. So hopefully he'll come out the other side and some of it will have been absorbed and taken on board.
Hopefully he's on Reddit, reading up quietly on his own about what you're going through. I think we're going to talk a little bit about brands and marketing, and I think that the lever is more about the internal workplace, but where it can, it feels like a miss not to talk to brilliant people about what brands are doing in this space. I'm going to come to you last, actually, Yvonne, because we didn't prep this question, quite frankly, so I'm giving you a second to think about it. I want you to think about whether brands are welcome in the conversation on Reddit about these topics. Zav, we were originally going to bring our brilliant clients from ST, Libresse, who have done some of the really sort of groundbreaking work around femcare issues. They've had to fly out, which they're absolutely gutted about. But we will represent. So we've done some amazing work with Libresse, Bodyform in the UK, on Blood Normal, Never Just a Period, Period-somnia, all those brilliant campaigns, which I'm sure some people have seen. But you've also got some other examples, I think, Zav, of marketers that you think are doing a good job of that wider conversation, and I'd love to get your view on who they are.
Well, I'm not sure whether they're doing it best. They're just some examples that come to mind. So you will all have seen the Nurofen pain gap work that Reckitt have done, which I thought was refreshing and sort of brought the right kind of conversation, but without it feeling with it feeling completely natural. So I enjoyed that the work that now AMV, but it was FCB work before we became One New AMV. Did for This Girl Can. I love that work because I think just very authentically it gives everybody permission to move it however they want to. And I think, again, definitely my experience is that very active young girls can very quickly become inactive women because of what people think of them rather than because what they want to do. So I enjoyed and think that's been important work. What else did I have? The Vanish Autism stuff that I worked on at when I was in my proofs role at Havas. So looking at the different experience of girls who have an autism diagnosis than boys. Maybe we'll talk about that in a bit later as well.
Yeah, so. I think we'll come back to that because I think it is really important, that piece of work, and it's it reminds me a bit, Claire, of I think it was actually PR and communications that you did around how women's experience of heart attack, cardiac arrest is maybe underreported, underknown. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I thought it surprised me when I read that, and I thought it was really bold of the BHF to be talking so specifically about a gender issue.
Yeah, I mean, the symptoms of a heart attack are, the obvious one and the most common one that people know is the severe chest pain and clutching at your chest, and that is still the most common symptom amongst men and women. Although women can sometimes experience more atypical symptoms, whether that's a pain in a jaw or pain in your back or sudden nausea, and it's those sorts of things that tend and the bias that exists within the society and the medical profession, that women are often underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed. Combine that with women sometimes like not wanting to cause a fuss or going, I'm sure it's just really bad indigestion, and that can sometimes delay them going to seek treatment, which often, and the longer you leave it, if you have had a heart attack, the worse the outcome is because you're not getting treatment as quickly. So, you know, a lot of what we do is trying to raise awareness over all of the symptoms, and ultimately, you know, everybody knows their own body pretty well, and if something feels a bit off, you know, listen to it. But from an employer's perspective as well, the things you can do are just making sure that people know their numbers in terms of blood pressure numbers. That's really easy thing to do, but a really important thing to do because it's an early indicator. So yeah, I mean, it's the overall raising awareness, reducing the stigma, and just bringing that conversation into workplaces.
And Vonnie, you were saying that it's really is obviously about conversation, isn't it? And I guess people seeking out that sort of knowledge where it's absent is a big factor of that. Do brands get involved in those conversations, or how does that work at the moment?
Yeah, I think despite what some people may think, brands are so welcome to be a part of the conversation on Reddit. But I'm going to steal your line from yesterday. Conversation is an art form. Conversation is not just about showing up. It's not just about broadcasting. It's about listening, it's two-way dialogue, it's about participating and then having a voice within it. So we often compare Reddit to a dinner party. You don't walk into a dinner party and dominate the conversation at the table. You sit down, you introduce your... Well, I know.
I've met
A good guest sits down and introduces himself. They ask about people, they inquire, they participate, and then maybe they'll change the course of the conversation. That's our advice to brands. If you want to show up, do so naturally, do so authentically, wade into the conversation. Don't necessarily always start your own. But I think the biggest value for brands on Reddit is the signals. If you want to know what people are talking about, what people are struggling with, what works about your product, what doesn't, the human signals and the intent signals you get on Reddit are the most valuable things for brands before they even start to talk.
And it's also a place where people talk about their employer and find out about health policy. So I was doing a little bit of genning up before we met you, and lots of very nuanced conversation where people will be on Reddit asking about the specific maternity policy or menopause policy at their workplace, and seeking out anonymously advice from other colleagues, I guess. Is that a big thing on there as well? I'd not seen that before.
Hugely. I think the majority of our conversations are intent-led conversations, so people are seeking advice. They're seeking to validate what they want to hear, or they're seeking a perspective on what they're looking for. The majority of conversations that happen are, is this normal? Or I want to do this, how do I go about it? So they're seeking help and taking an action. And I think that's what's incredibly valuable for anyone, especially a brand.
It's really important. It's one of the great things about the platform is that there's kind of like subdivisions of communities. And one of the really important things that we leaned into with the 50% CEO handbook was looking at how intersectionality shows up in all of those levers, and as you would expect, it magnifies any problem which is emerging or any bias which exists. And I think it's one of the areas. Health is one of the areas where that is most pronounced. We were chatting earlier about the work on Vanish that you did, and I think autism and gender is one of the maybe less talked about intersectionalities. Could you speak to us about that piece of work? So I think it's interesting that where that came from and why you did it like that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a few years ago now, actually, 3 or 4 years ago. But it's really simple. Boys. Autistic boys manifest very differently, and I can see Sharon over there. Hello. And girls manifest differently, and sometimes not at all. At least not in the way that the science has shown. So, all of the science around autism in children was built around boys, and so it's an accepted norm that girls get diagnosed, much later, if at all, and as a result, that their health outcomes and mental health outcomes are more complex and less than ideal a lot of the time, and so that was the story that lay behind that piece of work. The reason we did it for Vanish is because one of the ways in which autistic children will look to secure themselves is through repeat wearing of single items of clothes, and and any autistic parent, any parent of someone who's autistic who displays that trait, because actually not all do, of course, will know that and know the biggest problem is when it's when it's not available. And you sure as hell can't let things like ruinous stains prevent it from being perfectly presented the next morning for wearing. So we brought all of those things together and made a really powerful piece of work. It sat right at, across multiple sort of intersections, I suppose, and it also worked like a train. So the interesting impact it had on brand scores, which I think wasn't expected. It won the Channel 4 Diversity in Advertising Prize as well. But it was a thrill to be involved in, partly because my daughter is autistic, but partly because you saw a brand really putting its money behind something like that was really going to benefit young women all across the country. And actually, so many people beyond this country have contacted me, the people that worked in that campaign, to ask how it was made, to thank us. So that's that story.
Yeah, and I think it's such a similarity with the work that Claire was doing on women and heart attacks as well. I think it just started a new conversation about is this an experience that we've overlooked and that we should be more curious about digging into. And I think at the heart of the whole of the health lever is this spirit of curiosity and open-mindedness and open-heartedness about how we resolve some of those situations for women in the workplace. And helping women in the workplace helps men. We know that, so it is not a one-track thing. I think we've only got about 5 minutes left, and I do want to get into a little bit more about our workplaces and what we could be doing differently in order to set ourselves up and our businesses for success. Claire, I think BHS is now dead. British Heart Foundation is a very female orientated business. Certainly was when I worked with you guys. Anything interesting that you're doing at your place or health-wise that we could learn from?
I think if we're nearly out of time, so I'll leave you with three actions that I think all employers can lean into, and certainly we do at work. We have 50% female exco, which obviously we all know drives different conversations and different outcomes. But the 3 things I think, awareness and education, I think is really key. You can make women's health, women's heart health, a core part of education at work, raising awareness of symptoms, which we've touched on today. From a heart health perspective, a ton of information on the BHF website on that. Second one is sort of designing working practices and processes around women's health. So building flexibility we've had a panel this week in terms of flexible first and flexible working practices, but really bringing that into the workplace when people have certain health conditions, how you make reasonable adjustments to allow them to still do their job well and do it successfully, and not feel bad or guilty or that they're putting anybody out because of that. And I think that's really, really important. And then the third one is just keep having the conversations. Zav's talked about the conversations you're exposed to and partake at home, bringing those conversations to work, because the more you can talk about things, any issues, the more you can be curious about it, the more it reduces the stigma around women's health issues. And a lot of that stigma is what prevents people talking. And that's what's so lovely about Reddit, because it's a safe space to have those conversations without fear or without judgment. And I think if you can do that more in real life as well as online, then the world will be a better, more accepting place in terms of diversity.
Cheers to that. Yvonne, could we learn from Reddit? Do you think we could be looking at some of those conversations and surfacing them in real life, as Claire says?
Yeah, I think whether you're an individual or whether you're here as a marketer or a brand, there's something for you to learn. I personally have learned so much as an individual from Reddit. I struggled with my own health battles. I didn't feel comfortable having that conversation with my employer. Another social platform, not Reddit, though I advise you to use Reddit, helps me navigate through the conversations. But I do love the anonymity that Reddit provides, because I do feel like it's a more honest conversation, and where I feel like I don't have to reveal too much more about myself in order to get an answer. And I think that's incredibly valuable to you, whether you as a person want advice or you as a marketer want to understand conversations that people are having.
That's so interesting. So, like, to your point earlier, we can learn how to behave as brands on Reddit from real life conversations, but maybe we can also learn a little bit from Reddit about how to behave when we're speaking to people one on one. Nice. Zav, any final thoughts? Like, what should we be doing differently or thinking about, or as leaders or marketers, actually, to drive the next conversation on this?
Surround yourself with brilliant women and men, and I mean, what? It's true. Oh fuck! I thought I'd fucked that up. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's people always go, well, how, like, God, what you always manage to create equal teams. I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, because you sort of set out to do it, and I think well, you have different conversations in a room that's got a relatively even number of men and women in it, and I think that's just for me it's a fact, and they're better conversations, they're richer conversations with different opinions, life experiences, perspectives, everything, and that creates a better business. I mean, it just creates a better business. It also makes life feel more fucking normal. Than the rooms I used to sit in many years ago. And then I mean, the other thing I'm really passionate about is just trying to encourage men to take paternity leave, which, if I single out one thing, I think the biggest challenge for us to really maintain and accelerate the careers of brilliant women in our organisations is for the burden to be shared at that moment. I actually never benefited from that, but I did manage to have some time off when I had one of my children, and I got a real first-hand experience of what a difference that makes, both to me and my relationship with my kids, but also it made to my wife as well. So I'd say that's critical. If men take time to be out of work, are we out of time? I've got. Sorry.
Can I have another minute? I mean, they're not going to drag us off the stage, are
they? The first time we implemented a longer period of paternity leave at one of the agencies I worked for, we watched the first men taking paternity leave freak the fuck out about being off, and I thought this was the most unexpected to me, but most valuable part of the whole process. And like, as in, and of course, because there was a sense that they were perfectly able to talk about it and raise it, I got lots of conversations, unlike any conversation I did from any women that were going off on maternity leave, about, but what am I going to get promoted? But what about this person over here? And I think the simple act of men going through that same experience was the most invaluable thing for that organisation, because when they came back from their paternity leave, after we'd talked them back into doing it, they came back with a totally different perspective of a woman's experience of going off on mat leave. So that's just one. It's just interesting. As I just remember these men kind of, fucking hell. And feeling able to talk about it. So yeah, that's what I would say. Apologies.
No, I think that's really good. That's good to have that. Thank you so much, everybody. Zav, Yvonne, Claire, thank you for joining us, especially at later notice. It was brilliant to have you. And yeah, hopefully that was useful. Please download the playbook, read the levers. I think they are some things that everyone can learn for their workplaces from there. And stick around for further conversations.